Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MedTech Impact Podcast, where you get to hear from leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of medical technology. I'm Kyle Cruz.
And I'm Richard Meiklejohn.
And we're your hosts of the show.
So today on the MedTech Impact Podcast, we are delighted to be joined by Melody Roberts, CEO and co-founder of Liv Labs. Melody, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Richard. It's great to be here. Hello, Kyle.
Hi, Melody.
Well, it is great to have you on as a guest. We are super excited, of course, to tell the story of what Liv Labs is up to and how you're helping women's health. Before we get into the exciting stuff, though, we do like to frame it for the audience. So please tell us, what is the big problem that Liv Labs is looking to solve?
Believe it or not, 78 million American women sometimes leak urine, and 29 million of us are experiencing moderate to severe leakage on a daily basis. That's what we're working to, that's a, what do you call it? That's a statistic we are working to reduce. We've developed a simple medical device that women can wear to get them back in the gym and keep them out of the operating room.
Wow, that's a huge statistic. That's impacting a lot of lives. What are the causes? Why is this arising as a problem?
So there are a few triggers. The cause, if you will, and I'm going to put it in simple sort of pedestrian terms, there's laxity in the pelvic floor, and this can lead to a little bit of urine leakage through the urethra that can come in the form of urgency, and more commonly from any kind of downward pressure on the bladder. So laughing, sneezing, coughing, jumping, running, weightlifting, even carrying a baby postpartum. Those things can all bring about urinary incontinence. And as it gets progressively worse, just walking through your neighborhood can feel risky.
And this feels like another one of these taboo topics. It's something that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to tell their friends. They don't want to share. If somebody's suffering from these symptoms right now, what do they do? What's their current best outcome or best way of trying to deal with this?
Early days, the vast majority of women will simply turn to incontinence pads. Those are very familiar. They're similar to menstrual pads. They're readily available at the drugstore, and no one's the wiser to your point about not wanting to talk about it. But typically this condition does worsen. So year in and year out, it's a thin incontinence pad, then a thicker incontinence pad, then it's getting expensive, getting worrisome. At its most extreme, and when I first started working in this category, even I couldn't believe this, but at its most extreme, women actually self-isolate. They can't go to a party where they might laugh. They're afraid they'll be discovered. They'll smell of urine. People will see the incontinence pads under their clothing. There's just a lot of fear, anxiety, and not shame exactly, but just, potential for humiliation is real.
Melody, you and Richard, I just did a great job breaking down the problem. Obviously, you started to touch on some of the products out there. Now, what about Liv Labs? What does your product and solution look like, and how is it going to help women that are impacted by incontinence?
We're developing what's called a vaginal pessary or a continence pessary. And you may not know the word pessary. We'll come back to that actually. A vaginal pessary is a vaginal insert, kind of like a menstrual cup or a tampon, but it doesn't catch any urine or absorb anything. It's actually worn next to the urethra. So, right, urine leaks out of the urethra, not the vagina. But our device is worn in the vagina where it props up the bladder neck and the bladder and keeps the urine in the body where it belongs. So basically it stops involuntary urine leakage without preventing intentional urination. So super simple. Think of it as a crutch for the bladder. It's just holding it up. Now, I mentioned that it's called a vaginal pessary. Pessary is a word that goes back to the Greeks, and it means river stone. I think the implication is that women have been finding ways to treat this condition themselves for a very long time. Pessaries, modern pessaries, have been around for many decades. They're typically prescribed. They're made out of medical grade silicone, which is used for implants. It's a very safe material. And traditionally, or currently, most of these pessaries are by prescription only, which means a woman goes into a clinic, gets fitted, and then she returns every 3 to 6 months to have the pessary removed, professionally cleaned, and reinserted. Ours will be used it'll be over the counter, used at home, and fully self-managed.
And how often and frequent will women have to change out your pessary device?
So our clinical trial, we have a clinical trial underway. Our clinical trial will determine exactly what the FDA allows us to say on our label, but our goal is to sell a 6-month use pessary that can be worn every day. And it can be simply inserted and removed and cleaned on a daily basis by the user. Super simple, very sustainable, very affordable, just more practical basically than what's available today.
And I think I was reading on your website that the hope here is that a prescription won't be necessary.
Well, that is our going in assumption. For those who are medical device savvy, your audience, this is a 510(k) pathway we're on, and the predicate product is a 30-day reusable. So ours would be a 6-month reusable. We are not only doing a clinical trial, but also extensive non-clinical testing that the FDA has mandated to make sure that the device is safe.
So it sounds like you have an amazing technology coming through. I'm now wondering, when you're thinking about the patient aspect, like what's that process been like of developing it with the patients? Because I think when we speak to a lot of founders, these things clearly, of course, go hand in hand. But again, when you have potentially a taboo topic like this, how have you found getting engagement with potential patients?
The product was initially invented by my co-founder, Carly Price. Carly's an award-winning industrial designer. I can guarantee that both of you and probably every listener have something in their home that she has designed and that's been manufactured and selling for a few decades. Carly herself experienced stress urinary incontinence. So this all started from the firsthand personal experience of a woman with the condition. And when she first discovered pessaries, she went out and bought everything available in the US and got a few smuggled in from overseas and tried them all, and ultimately concluded that none of them were sufficiently comfortable and effective. So the very first piece of research was really firsthand knowledge of my co-founder. Subsequently, we've done focus groups, we ran a feasibility study, we have, of course, interviewed experts, urogynecologists who treat this condition and perform surgery, obstetrics and gynecology professionals who might recommend the product instead of recommending a referral to a surgeon. And we learn at every step. The challenge is greatest when you're asking someone to use the device pre-FDA clearance. I mean, I think that's just inherent with any clinical trial. Try this drug, try this device. But it's a non-significant risk device, and in general, we've managed it, right? We've called people we knew had the condition, friends of friends. That was the first phase of feasibility study recruitment, and now we use more of a traditional clinical trial method. The principal investigators discuss this as a possibility with their patients. And then once patients have done the study, they very often will recommend the study to a friend.
And clearly, again, as you highlighted at the top, there's a huge need for this. And I think, as Kyle mentioned, or on your website, not only are you building a product, you are building a community. And I think that's a real strong calling card as part of your go-to-market strategy, the way that you're interacting with patients, but you're giving them that sense of community. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
I'd love to. And this is not a correction, but I want to say that part of the challenge for Liv Labs and for women in general is they don't consider themselves patients. They don't think of their leaking as a medical condition. And in the main, they don't contact a medical professional until they're 6, 10, and 20 years in, and symptoms are significantly worsening. So we have oriented ourselves around fitness instead. Our website is Liv Labs Fitness. Our social media handle is @Liv Labs Fitness, because that's how women are thinking about the challenge and the need. Our community, the Nobody Talks Club, is really a forum to get education out to women. And to the extent that they interact with each other, terrific. But there's no really tremendously detailed place to learn about urinary incontinence that isn't a medical website with a very medical presentation. So the Nobody Talks Club, we envision as it evolves as a true educational platform with courses, webinars, and other forums for ongoing self-care learning. And of course, urinary incontinence, like all conditions, is often co-present with other things. A typical other thing might be anxiety. A woman with urinary incontinence may also be looking to lose weight, or maybe having sexual wellness issues. So these are all things that we don't currently address, but we will in the future. We are building a full platform for treatment. And what that means is that we will offer the medical device and a pelvic floor fitness training app. That allows women to get a quick fix, if you will, for their symptoms, because the device can, in some instances, completely eliminate symptoms, but at the very least reduce them, which helps a woman become more physically active again. And then the pelvic floor fitness training app introduces standard best practices for reducing leakage, things you might learn from a physician or a physical therapist about how to consume fluids, how to breathe when doing certain exercises, how to toilet differently, and most of all, what core strengthening and pelvic floor strengthening exercises are shown to correlate with reduced leakage. So it's a 1-2 punch, a holistic approach.
Well, this is fantastic. I think it's something, Kyle, we hear about a lot, is that our startups sometimes think of going in stealth mode. And this is the complete opposite. This is like education, this is support, this is about putting it out there and making it accessible. And I think this is such an important part of what you have to do to actually reach the people that you want to help.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
right.
I would agree too. And what I love, Melody, that you're doing, I think it's all about community, you know. It makes so much sense, right? When you build a community of people that have similar experiences, you know, you're going to be able to learn more. You're going to be able to get, you know, more people, you know, kind of joining together on that mission on solving those health problems. And I think that's really important. So, you know, from a go-to-market standpoint, you know, being able to bring all of your patients together, give them the tools that they need to learn more about how to solve their problem, and then to give them a product and a device to do so, is, you know, it's really the recipe for success for everyone involved. So it really is, Richard, a great point.
I think people turn to each other for advice. And, you know, we turn to inexpert friends for advice. So the better armed those friends are to give you good advice, the more women will get the help, and men, the more men and women will get the help they need. So that's very much part of it. The other thing is we're seeing already in popular press and in social media that taboo topics on the whole are more and more in discussion. And that's just across the whole sweep, from erectile dysfunction to urinary incontinence to all the challenges of menopause. Articles are being written, celebrities are speaking out. You know, I'm thrilled. We don't want to be the only company trying to build awareness or break down a taboo. That never works. We want to be in partnership and in part of a trend where that's all changing, because that will help us build our business faster. And it will help more women get the help they need faster.
Yeah.
Now, Melody, we touched on a little bit before. I'm thinking it'd be great for potential customers to know what's the timeline, like what can we expect in terms of, you know, going forward, how long it will take to finish your trials, and then of course, when might we see this in shops?
Well, we're on a path to be in market by the middle of next year. So this is, you know, when you hear about medical devices, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, not untrue. We didn't just start yesterday, but we're getting close to commercialization. So we intend to be building up our brand and becoming much more vocal about our product and our service in the next 6 to 9 months. We have already launched a coaching service. So if anyone listening is leaking and she'd like to get after that right away, you should drop by our website, livlabsfitness.com.
Well, and also, Melody, your clinical trials are accepting
Yes.
patients, correct? So maybe where can potential patients learn more about, where to sign up?
So we are recruiting patients at getapessary.com, and pessary is spelled Pessary, getapessary.com. You'll want to be living in or near Columbus, Ohio, or Birmingham, Alabama to qualify for the study. But yes, absolutely. Take a gander or tell a friend. Might be a spouse, a neighbor, an aunt, a daughter. Tell a friend.
You heard it. Tell a friend. The more the merrier. I think this is all part of that community building. And
The
so
sooner the better.
there you go. Sooner the better too. So Melody, one of the things we always like to touch on, and I imagine again you referred to it a little bit there, this is not something new. You've been clearly on this journey for a little while. What's that been like in terms of challenges and getting to where you are now? What's been the sort of the stumbling blocks, the learning curves that you've had through this journey?
Wow, so many. Where to begin? Well, let me address anyone in the audience who's developing a medical device for the first time or considering going through this process for the first time. I have a background in research and development, and product design and development, and service design and development. So R&D doesn't scare me. Mapping out a plan, bringing in all the subject matter experts, engineers, designers, quality people, no big deal. But medical device development is humbling in a few ways. The first is that when you're out there trying to raise money, your average investor would like for you to already have revenue. Now, the telltale's out of school. Shortly after I got involved with Liv Labs, I went to the University of Chicago Booth School of Business lecture on venture capital. It was an intro class for graduate students. The professor stood up and said, literally the first thing he said is, well, whatever you do, don't invest in medical devices. And then proceeded to talk about software for an hour.
That pretty much sums it up. It's a tough space,
right?
And it takes a long time.
So I had a mentor around the same time who asked me, so can you go without salary for 2 or 3 years? And can you write a grant application? And I said, yes, and I can learn. And those are really preconditions for many of us. If you're not in an academic setting with an academic salary, doing this on the side with a bunch of consultants who've done it for other physicians on the side, then if you're in it full time, you may need secondary income at first, and you will need to learn how to write grants, particularly if you're working in women's health. Silicon Valley Bank publishes a report on who's investing in what in healthcare. And the women's health section is multiple government agencies. So we are backed by both the NIH and the NSF and the state of Illinois. We've done substantial grant applying and received significant funding by award and continue down that path.
Well, clearly you're finding a way, you're making it work. And it is something we hear again and again, how underfunded women's health is. And so, unfortunately, it is relying on these grants. And we hope, and we are seeing some people stepping forward. I think we need a lot more of it again. So I think as much as the rallying call for Liv Labs, we need a rallying call for women's health in general, investment towards that.
Oh, we've got one. The White House and some significant allies like Maria Shriver, for example, have made this a big platform and priority just over the past few months. There's currently an ARPA-H, Sprint for Women's Health, being decided. So probably every women's health country on the planet has applied for their $3 million and $10 million grants. They'll be handing out just a handful in the end. But Biden administration requested, I think, $20 billion in funding from Congress for this. So our primary funder, the government, is actually getting it together. Look, they have the data. They know how much aging women are costing the population. So Medicaid, Medicare, women live longer. We require more health care, and we're not as healthy as we age for a whole variety of reasons. And at the end of the day, the government has all the data. So they see what's coming. That's why there's such a priority there. And then on the investor side, I expect everything will change. You know, investors like to see exits, they like to see traction, they like to see proof that this is a big idea before they jump in. So there's some bold ones, planting seeds. Y Combinator invested in us early. Thank you, partners of Y Combinator. And they're not just Liv Labs, several other women's health companies as well. So it'll change. It's going to be hot.
And if I could chime in too, first off, Y Combinator is one of the most impressive organizations backing some of the greatest early stage, well, now today, some of the biggest companies, technologies, that's impacted, almost everyone one way or another in this world. So that's, a nice little look on the resume there when you've got Y Combinator backing them. But I do think to your point that you made earlier, I thought that was actually really funny how the professor said, don't invest in medical device, and I think for a lot of folks in the medical device industry, it goes back to the importance of community, right? Because this community here is so tight, right? And everyone is all like they are doing everything they can to help one another. I think it's one thing that I've noticed, one thing that's really made me more and more passionate as the years go on of working in this industry, to see really how much people care and how well they work together. And I must say, when I go to all these medical device events, the amount of venture capital folks and investors that are there, learning about and seeing these companies, meeting these founders, learning about these technologies firsthand to really understand the impact that they're going to make, to patients all around the world. That's making it easier for these early stage companies to raise capital, right? So I think to your point, getting out there, being a part of that community and making sure that you're getting yourself in front of those venture capital people so they know who you are, what you're all about, where you're going. And, to your point, Melody, the potential, exit strategy in place, and the market share that you could, tap into is pretty significant with what you're doing. So, as difficult as, yeah, go ahead.
Almost every medical device is a scalable global opportunity. So many businesses are local in nature or culturally specific, but the body is the body. And of course, by gender or other considerations, there can be changes or differences. But inherently, medical device is something humanity needs. These are big business opportunities. And believe, there are investors out there. I mean, we all know that. Don't get me wrong. It's just the very early days,
I think it's a good time to, now get into future milestones. Obviously, you mentioned, that you and the team are striving for FDA approval next year. What other milestones in the next, say, 6 to 12 to 18 months is Liv Labs focused on achieving?
So on the device side, we are on the path to a 510(k) clearance. We have a predicate device. And on the software side, we are about 80% through building our pelvic floor fitness training app. So we'll be launching that ahead of the device and starting to acquire customers who are interested in doing their Kegels, getting a little more fit, or supporting the exercises that are prescribed to them by a professional. So there's no reason that these two things can't, work together. Of course, our coaching was already launched, so those two are fairly symbiotic. We can coach and use our own software to help women with their everyday regimen and activity planning. When it all comes together, we'll be able to bundle the software, the product, and the community, so women get everything they need at a good value. And ultimately, we anticipate our customer base being fairly loyal. So even surgery is not 100% in terms of treating urinary incontinence. Once you start leaking, exercise is a part or a need for the rest of your life. And the use of a pessary may be all you need at first, or it may be in combination with other therapies. So it's a long-term commitment.
Well, it sounds like a good road ahead. And one of the things you mentioned, the we, so I'd love to just quickly tune back into your co-founder, Carly. How did you and her first get together?
Carly and I go back to the 90s. She and I both started our design careers at Smart Design in New York City. I had just gotten my master's degree in human-centered product design with an emphasis on design research and strategy. And Carly had just earned her undergraduate degree in industrial design with an emphasis on physical product. We worked together on diapers, mixing bowls, breakfast foods, just a whole bunch of different consumer products. We worked well together. We have some similarities, but she's very structured, probably the best design manager I've ever seen in action. I'm more conceptual, and I'm a lot about articulating why we're doing what we're doing in words. She's making it work. So we're good complementary couple that way. Now, we both went off to IDEO separately, but we worked there together as colleagues as well. And then when I went corporate at McDonald's, she became the client relationship lead at IDEO. So we've continued our friendship and our professional partnership in a variety of different roles and dynamics over, 20 some years. So
That's really neat. Kyle, again, Melody's got this unique background herself.
I was so fascinated, Melody, when I saw your history and time with McDonald's and Panera. I mean, two massive brands, right, in the fast food industry, and that obviously everyone's familiar with. And I'm just curious, those experiences of, holding pretty significant positions with both organizations working in that B2C space. What kind of takeaways and how did that maybe help and prepare you for the opportunity here that you have with Liv Labs?
in literally every way. So McDonald's is famous for its leadership training and candidly for the leadership that their executives embody. So I learned a tremendous amount about leading, communicating, and managing teams there. I learned how you make any solution, a thing or a system or a service, scalable, how you localize it and customize it for different needs. And honestly, it's McDonald's is kind of like a government, a federal government. Every market has a certain degree of autonomy, and that can be by geography. Well, it's always by geography, but even inside the US, there are regional markets that have different needs. So you end up in a political system where you have to prove that a solution is better, not just in the abstract, but for that broader customer base. And the customer base could be the owner operators, not just the end user, the worker, or the customer of the restaurants. So a ton of learning about how a business decision is made and how a new solution is embraced, particularly in a system that has very tight tolerances and where unintended consequences are not acceptable. Now, a startup is wild and woolly by comparison. So we don't operate like a giant corporation here at Liv Labs. It's teeny tiny. But I can sort of see out into the future what it's going to be like to try and scale this product and service, not just in the US, but overseas. I have experience patenting solutions in global markets, so I was able to make strategic decisions about how to spend that kind of money. And even in terms of the subject matter, there's more similarity than you might expect. My job at McDonald's and then later at Panera was to help the organization shift from staffed service to self-service. What tools do you need to give the customer, and how differently do you need to organize a restaurant to enable that dynamic, to empower the customer to order for herself, to collect, like in Panera, there's a rapid pickup solution where the customer may never even interact with a human at the restaurant in the moment, right? And now I'm working on moving from staffed care to self-care. So thematically similar. And it's all about how you take what used to be expert knowledge and make it common.
I have to say, Melody, that as a marketer in B2B, there is a huge, like the self-service comment that you just made, right? how B2B companies can make it easier, right, for other, right, of their prospects or customers to get the information and get what they need on their own time, right, to make informed decisions, to make strategic business investments. That trend crossover from B to C, everything that was happening in B to C, 5-10 years ago, you're seeing it now come over to B to B, which is
Yeah.
really interesting. So hearing your experiences now and what you bring to Liv Labs, it's crystal clear. I'm super excited. And it was a great reflection there. So it just makes so much sense.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's the way of the future. Look, there is about 96% staffing adequacy in women's health today, and the government projects it will drop to 87% in the next 12 years. And then it will keep dropping. Well, who's going to fill the gap? It's not actually going to be trained professionals. It's going to be us. We are going to be self-testing for cervical cancer. We are going to be treating our own UTIs. They have already made, typical of me, birth control just went over the counter. The clinical care model is too heavy on expert intervention. It is staffing intensive, and we have to preserve, now and in future, we're going to have to preserve those very specialized and highly trained and well-paid resources to the highest purpose that they serve. Things we cannot possibly do for ourselves. Treating everyday stress urinary incontinence is something we can all learn to do for ourselves.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on this word sense. I mean, there's just so much sense about what you're saying here, the model you're doing, and something you said as well, like you mentioned this global outlook, which made me think that clearly you and Carly are getting together with a bigger vision, so maybe you can just round things off for us here and tell us, if you look ahead, what is that bigger picture? What are you hoping to do with Liv Labs 5 years down the line, say?
All right, well, if I mention a little blue pill to a 13-year-old, they know what I mean. But I would hazard a guess that 20 years ago, nobody knew what erectile dysfunction was, or ED, and nobody wanted to talk about it. I really think our product is going to have that same kind of cachet, that same kind of meme-worthy, unspoken knowledge, and the teenagers will know. And that's my goal. It might still be a little taboo, but it won't be unknown. A pessary will be a thing, even if the word is unfamiliar and people are using our brand name instead. That's my vision, that's my goal, and that's what I think is going to happen.
Well, Melody, that's fantastic. There are going to be plenty of people out here, our audience, hearing your story and your vision, and they're going to be inspired. They might even want to get in touch with you and learn more about Liv Labs. So what's the best way for them to do so?
So if they'd like to talk to me personally, I would recommend LinkedIn. They can just search Melody Roberts, Liv Labs, McDonald's, there I'll be. To learn more about the company, go to our website, livlabsfitness.com. That's LIVLABS, fitness.com. And to learn about our clinical trial, it's getapessary.com.
Awesome. Well, that inbox is definitely going to be exploding now. There's just multiple ways to get in touch. And yeah, this is awesome. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing the mission and sharing what lies ahead for Liv Labs. It's
absolute pleasure.
Fantastic that you're taking a lead on this and you're truly making a difference for women's health.
Thank you. I couldn't think of anything I'd rather be doing.
Perfect, Melody. You are amazing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, another huge thank you to Melody Roberts, co-founder and CEO of Liv Labs. And thank you for tuning in for another episode of the MedTech Impact Podcast. I'm Kyle Cruz.
And I'm Richard Beaglejohn. Until next time, keep innovating.